Good morning and welcome. My name is Javier Alberto Soto. I'm the CEO of the Denver Foundation. I'm thrilled to welcome you all this morning. Thank you so much for being here. As I was preparing for this session this morning, I was reflecting on the importance of the social impact sector, particularly during moments of crisis. And together, we've been through quite a few of these over the past couple of years alone. Certainly the COVID crisis, but also again yesterday with the shooting at East High School, we saw the importance of the civic sector and the social impact sector and the role that all of you play in moments of crisis to help heal the community, to help move the community forward. And within that social impact sector, nonprofits obviously serve as the backbone of that important community resource. So thank you all for everything that you do. Thank you as well for your trust in the Denver Foundation and your partnership. We have been in this community serving philanthropists and nonprofits for close to 100 years. And actually, as we get close to celebrating our centennial in 2025, you'll be hearing a lot more from us about that. And we want to hear a lot more from you all as well about how we can best be a partner in philanthropy to all of you, your staffs, your boards, and the people that you serve. This portfolio for us, the agency endowment portfolio, is one that stretches across a number of different missions and across a vast geography as well, from Leadville to right here in downtown Denver. Again, we appreciate your partnership and your trust and faith in us to be in deep partnership with you. This webinar is specifically designed for our nonprofit fund holders. And in just a few moments, you'll be hearing from our team of experts here at the Foundation that most of you are probably in deep conversation with and ongoing dialogue with as part of your relationship with us. So Desa West, who you'll be hearing from in a moment, is our Chief Impact Officer. We also have Ben Perry, Genevieve Laca, and Zach Clapper, who you'll be hearing from as well. So with that, I do want to note that this is being recorded. So anyone who you want to share this with after this webinar, you'll be able to do that as well. So Desa, I am turning it over to you. Thank you all again.
Great. Thank you, Javier. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. I'm Desa West. I'm the Chief Impact Officer here at the Denver Foundation. And just in case that title doesn't mean anything to you, I'll just describe a little bit about the role that I play here. My biggest job is to provide leadership to our impact group, which is a department that is about half of the Foundation's total staff. We do a whole variety of stakeholder-facing activities as part of the impact group. Certainly setting out strategy for the organization as it relates to community, to nonprofits, to fund holders. We do all of the organization's grant making, both through our community grants program and our special funds, manage scholarships, support all of you as agency fund holders, work with donor advised fund holders and other donors across the agency, as well as professional advisors. And finally, also housed within our work is our community leadership activities, including our policy work, as well as our engaged learning and evaluation work. So lots of activity happening within our department. And I'm going to just talk about a few of the priorities that the Foundation has been engaged in and just give a brief update about some of the areas that we're most excited about. And then I'll pass it along to my teammates to talk with you in some more detail about a few of those different areas. So if I could have the next slide, that would be great. So you may remember that 2 years ago, the Denver Foundation launched a new strategic framework, really setting out our path for the next decade of time in the Denver community. One of the really fundamental pieces of that framework was the idea that the Denver Foundation is a really unique entity in that it has deep, deep relationships with a whole variety of very different stakeholders, from nonprofit organizations to grassroots community members, to folks of high net worth, and others who are engaged in the philanthropic space. And we wanted to really use this framework as an opportunity to create closer connections between those different groups, most particularly between our nonprofit partners and our fund holders. We know that the value that we provide to those donors really has to do with our community connections and our community knowledge, and the value that comes to nonprofits from working with those philanthropists are the resources that they can bring into those communities. So we did lots of things around that. We restructured the organization to create the impact group that I just described to you. But we also created a lot of opportunities, new opportunities for donors and nonprofits to connect with each other, to work together. We have new mechanisms in place for our staff to lift up the work of nonprofits to our donor advised fund holders on a really regular basis. Opportunities for nonprofits and donors to connect with each other. For example, we just held a salon where a small group of nonprofits and a small group of donors came together to engage in some deep dialogue about the issue of economic opportunity in the Denver metro community, and really had a chance to get to know each other more deeply. So you'll see more and more things like that as time goes on over the course of this strategic framework. We're consistently looking for opportunities to make those connections happen. The second thing that we're really proud about in this strategic framework is our community grants program. Now, this is our long-standing grant program. It's the way that many, many organizations know us across the community. But it's really a group of discretionary dollars that we have as a foundation to be able to give out separate from our donors. Really focused on issue areas that the community told us were most relevant, most important, most salient, and most critical for us to focus on. So when we created our strategic framework, we gathered input from almost 8,000 people and came up with 5 key priority areas for the community grants program. I know Jen's going to go into more detail about these, but just as a teaser, they are economic opportunity, education, particularly in the K-12 space, housing, transportation, and environment and climate. So some of those have been new to us over the last few years. Some of them have been spaces that the Denver Foundation has been in for a long time. As part of our work over the last couple of years, we've done a lot to streamline that program. We've cut the application almost in half. We've streamlined the reporting requirements, and we've really found ways to lift up our core values of constituent leadership and racial equity. And that's been a really important way for us to support organizations across the Denver metro area. But we also heard when we were going through our planning process that just giving out resources wasn't enough. That really folks wanted to see the Denver Foundation take a more active and proactive role in supporting systems change for the issues that we care most about. And so for that reason, we now engage in policy and advocacy work across those same 5 issue areas as our grant making. We have a policy director on staff whose full-time job it is to support those efforts. And we work at a state level on legislation, a local level on different ordinances. We work on ballot initiatives. And we also are, of course, in a nonpartisan way, helping to support just general education for different election opportunities. We have a mayoral forum coming up at the end of April, just as an opportunity for folks to learn about the 2 runoff candidates. So we're looking forward to that. Another thing that we're very serious about here at the foundation is the idea of learning. It's very important to us to be a learning organization versus a knowing organization. And to that end, we have really started to engage in a whole variety of activities to listen to our stakeholders more than once every 10 years when we do a strategic plan, but on an ongoing basis. So you'll be getting surveys from us, invitations to participate in focus groups That's happening with our stakeholders across the board. And it really provides us an opportunity to reflect, to learn, to make sure that we're working towards the vision and the mission of the Denver Foundation and our drive towards racial equity in our community. And finally, I'll just segue into Ben's presentation. The last thing that I wanted to highlight that we heard as we were creating our strategic framework was that it was really important for us to use all of our assets towards mission. And so that means not just the 5% or so that we're putting out in grant making opportunities, but really all of those assets in our investment portfolio. And so have been making some really great progress that I know Ben will talk about in some depth towards moving our resources to a place where we are where we are engaged in the kind of social responsibility that we hope that our whole community will be engaged in as it relates to environment, as well as the other issue areas that the Denver Foundation prioritizes and those themes. So I would now like to turn it over to Ben, who's already on camera. This is Ben Perry, our Senior Director of Philanthropic Investments. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks so much, Desa, and greetings to you all. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning. As Desa mentioned, my name is Ben Perry. I'm Senior Director of Philanthropic Investments here at the Foundation. And what that means, and especially relevant to you as our agency fund holders, is that our team is charged with how assets come into the Foundation and then how those assets are invested in ways that meet your needs as our stakeholders and achieve the impact and influence in our community. Lastly, we're here to provide content and thought leadership to help you all understand the investments and maximize the value out of these relationships. Our team consists of experts in working with professional advisors, working with planned giving, working with complex assets, working with impact investments. And we want to bring all of these capabilities to help you maximize your mission. I'll ask if we change to the next slide. As some of you may know, as an agency fund client, we offer 3 internal investment options. These are referred to as our investment pools. And we're going to quickly walk through these so you have an understanding of the options available to you. These pools are large collections of mutual funds, ETFs, stocks and bonds, private equity, and each of them is designed to achieve some specific goals and match with your goals as an organization. In addition to that, we're able to offer custom options to our agency fund clients, working with our network of professional advisors. And certainly in the current market conditions, we've seen a lot of interest in different short-term and cash options as you all are thinking through your budget needs in the current year. One thing I will certainly say at the start is we're seeing a lot of market volatility. Certainly there's been a lot of challenges in the market, both from inflation in the past 18 months and certainly more recently with some challenges in the banking sector. We continue to feel bullish about the long-term prospects for growth of charitable assets, but most importantly, we're here to come alongside you and support you in conversations with your boards, with your investment committees about these investments. We value transparency. We value the opportunity to be open and help you understand what your investment relationship is like with the Denver Foundation and how that can help you meet your goals. So briefly, we'll walk you through the 3 investment options available to you internally. Our largest and oldest option is the long-term balance pool. This is a very, very heavily diversified pool intending to provide long-term returns, long-term support for a perpetual endowment. It has a heavy allocation to private markets like private equity, hedge funds, which are designed not only to dampen volatility, but also to help achieve some of our social responsibility goals. I'll ask for the next slide, please. Our second pool and our second largest pool is our Sustainable and Responsible Investment Pool, SRI. Many of you will have heard the term ESG in terms of environmental, social, and governance. This is an approach to investments that has certainly emerged heavily in the last few decades, and trying to align your values as an organization, our values as the Denver Foundation, with our investments. It doesn't have a particular set mandate across the pool. What we're doing is we're looking for managers, we're looking for investment strategies that help accomplish some of the strategic framework that Desa talked about earlier. Over time, we also expect this pool to have a heavier weighting towards private equity to, again, dampen volatility and accomplish some of those social responsibility goals with particular managers. We find that many of our clients, many of our stakeholders are interested in this pool if in their personal assets, if in their corporate assets, they're trying to invest alongside their own values. Let me ask for the next slide, please. And then lastly, and particularly for your boards and investment committees who are strongly focused on costs, we offer an index pool. This is a collection of Vanguard mutual funds, very low cost exposure through index funds to the markets. And you'll see the returns certainly match what we've seen in the public capital markets over the last few years. Lastly, I just want to share some about the capabilities that are available to you. Again, our goal in supporting you as our agency fund clients is to bring the capabilities that we use with individual donors, with our corporate donors, to bear on your mission. That can look like these conversations around investments. That can also look like supporting you in plan giving. We are able to help you navigate complex gifts. We're also able to provide you as part of your fee agreement with some unique tools like charitable gift annuities, charitable remainder trusts, all in the interest of helping you access new donors and engage those donors more deeply. Finally, we are active impact investors, both ourselves and then our donors. And one thing we can do is talk to you about impact investing ideas as you're thinking through new projects and help you craft that term as you might take to your own donors. Certainly, we're here to answer all sorts of questions about both complex assets and investments. A date we do want to share is our annual investment luncheon, which will be this summer in August. That's a chance to hear directly from our investment consultant about what's going on in the market, about changes and developments in these investment pools. We certainly encourage you to bring your investment committees, members of your board, to hear more of that really compelling presentation. Most importantly, come to us with questions, bring us into the conversation. This is an important part of our job, and we're excited to do it. With that, I'm going to transfer it over to my colleague, Genevieve Laka, our Director of Engaged Philanthropy, who's going to talk more about funding and grant opportunities available through the Denver Foundation. So Genevieve, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Ben. It is so good to see all of you. I had the honor of managing the agency fund program for about 1.5 years before Zach came on board and really gave it some fresh life. So what I'm here to talk to you about is it within my role of the Director of Engaged Philanthropy, which encompasses the Community Grants Program, donor advised fund holders, and the approach I took to my conversation today is thinking back to the about 12 years I spent as a development director before coming to the foundation and thinking about all the questions I had about community foundations. Who do I talk to? What are appropriate questions? How far can I push to try and get those staff supporters or internal funds? How does a community foundation really operate? So I'm going to really focus on the funding opportunities. And my role is to help connect you with the best people here at the foundation to answer your questions. Fortunately, we have a whole team of folks, so sometimes it's going to be someone who manages a special handling competitive process. Sometimes it's someone on my team for the Community Grants Program, and other times it's working with someone who is going to be a relationship manager with a family who wants to support your organization. So I'm going to go through some of those strategies and how to take advantage of all the supports that the Denver Foundation has in terms of funding opportunities. So what is our role as a broader foundation? We're here not only to teach you what we have here in the different funds that we have available, but also to learn from you. We talked earlier a bit through DESA's role about what that looks like in terms of not just our funding, but our policy work and the engagement that we wish to see in community. And we can't do that without you. So I would say, as you have things that you see come up that impact you, your constituents, the work you do, let us know so that we can have that on our radar to share both with our teams internally and externally. We are also here to support you through the application process. Please always know that for every competitive process, there is someone here on the back end that would be more than happy to answer questions about your nonprofit's fit with that particular funding opportunity, what a particular application question means, what the process looks like. We don't want it to be a surprise for you, and we want you to be able to put your best foot forward with whatever applications make sense for you here. Also note that most decisions are made here through a committee process. We really work to democratize philanthropy, and we really want to make sure that we have many voices taken into account. So while you are talking to a specific person who facilitates and manages that process, just know, as the manager of the community grants program, for example, I do not then sit down and say, yep, this one, and these are out. It's actually for that one, a team of over 20 people, both community members and staff who make these decisions. So just know that for every application you turn into the Denver Foundation, we take a lot of time to care about what you've said and share those results because you took a lot of care to share with us. Some common grant questions. Let's say you look at the list that I'm about to share and you think, how do I pick between this one or this one? Well, the great news is you don't have to. These don't influence one or another, so you can apply to one, and whether you are accepted or awarded in that application does not impede your ability to focus and apply on another application as well through the Denver Foundation. And what does your status as an endowment fund holder mean? I will say from a proactive management tool, it is pretty neutral. So when we have that review committee looking, we do not star which ones are endowment fund holders. And that really works back to our racial equity component that drives a lot of the Denver Foundation's work. We know that there are great, engaged, constituent-focused groups who might be a little bit further back in terms of being ready to open an endowment or have that public support capacity to open one, and don't want to necessarily have a weighted system in that term. That said, since we know your work really well, we will provide information as we know it. And our job as a foundation and as your agency fund partner is to advise you on which ones might make sense for you to apply to and get you in touch with the right folks. How do you apply? The vast majority are through TDF Grants Manager. When you get this slide deck, you'll be able to go in there. But I'm actually going to show you a page here in a minute that shows you all of the funding opportunities without having to register, so that you can at least get a start on what you think might be the most accessible funding opportunities for you. And where do you learn more? Well, right here, we'll get started on the next slide. So if you go to our website, there'll be a button at the top that is called Funding Opportunities. If you click it, the first one that you're going to see with that little red arrow is to sign up for funding opportunities through our newsletter. So that's the best and easiest way for you to just get a quick email from the Denver Foundation that says, here are the cycles that are opening up. Here are new funding opportunities, scholarship opportunities that the Denver Foundation is launching, so you can always be in the know. But that doesn't mean that we don't want you to also just give us a call and see what's new over here as well. In terms of the FAQ, you'll see a lot of those common questions that I just answered, as well as dates, times, and kind of how our foundation operates and approaches the funding opportunities that we manage. When you open that funding opportunities page, the first thing I want you to do is go to that status button and look. It'll say open and all, and you'll actually want to click all if you're in that investigative stage. And that'll show you all the opportunities, whether they're open or closed at the moment, so that you can really plan out your year, because I'm sure you are also looking at other community foundations and their
opportunities. And if you're like me, you're a development officer who really wants to just plot out your year and not be surprised by dates. So when you look through it, the community grants program there is an example. It'll show you everything that you should know to be able to decide if it's a good initial fit for you. Open, close dates, the focus areas, the region. Just know that because we are the Denver Foundation, our internal programs tend to focus on Metro Denver, but a lot of our competitive processes also focus on Colorado overall. So don't be limited to Metro Denver. Just know that there are some for Colorado and other regions within the state as well. So on the left here, you'll see all the different areas that our programs currently support. And a lot of these, you might be thinking, well, Desa talked about those 5 areas. There's a lot outside of those. And there's some that I think are important in Denver that aren't included in this list. And you're absolutely right. A lot of our funds and competitive funds are initiated by donors. And so we carry forth their work, sometimes decades after they're gone, to impact the areas and causes that were very important to them at the time. So we try to use our internal funds to focus on Metro Denver's needs as they shift. And then we also honor donor intent as well. So when you look at the community grants program, I think it's important to keep in mind that while the community grants program is probably our most public fund, it is only about 5 million of our about 120 million that go out each year. That was about the number last year. So I would say keep in mind, look at all those other opportunities, but I do want to make sure that folks on this call have the chance to consider the community grants program ahead of our next cycle, which will open June 15th and close August 1st. Our number one lens through which we view this entire program is a racial equity lens. That does not mean that we don't support groups who happen to be white-led or early on in their racial equity journey, but given the statistics nationwide on funding organizations that are led and staffed majority by BIPOC folks, we recognize that this focus will help create equity across the sector. You must fit into one of those priority areas. You can fit into multiple or just one. Those are both completely viable approaches. And then financial stability. When we say that, we are very realistic that our application and our grant award is between $20,000 and $50,000, which while it is a substantial grant, it is not going to make or change the entire trajectory of your organization. So we look more at the health of the life cycle of that grant, which is 12 months. So do you prove out, or can you prove out that you'll be financially viable for the time that we'll be working with you? We really love to see community feedback, community engagement, and community leadership on a continuum within the community grants program to show that the voices of those that you're serving are not only heard, but influence your programs and are a part of the work that you do. We also want to note that this is the money that the Denver Foundation uses directly out of our own endowment, which is why we have all of those points of feedback that Desa mentioned to make sure that we're meeting the community's needs as much as possible, because thousands of donors have helped invest in this program, and we want to make sure that it is most impactful for Metro Denver. So outside of the community grants program, there are 2 specific Denver Foundation support grants that I really wanted to make sure that we talked about. The first is Strengthening Neighborhoods. This can be a smaller 501c3 nonprofit, fiscally sponsored nonprofit, or any 3 or more unrelated individuals who really have a passion for a project in community. So if you're talking with a community organizer or a PTA, any group of people who has a really good idea out there, and they might not have the capacity or the structure yet to apply to the community grants program, this is a great resident-led effort that we support here in Denver. And so I wanted to make sure to have that contact information if you think it might be a good fit for you, or if you would like to connect another group here in Denver with it. We also have technical assistance. So if you have received a grant of any amount from any group here at the Denver Foundation, a donor advised fund holder, one of our competitive processes, for the 3 years after that, you can access the technical assistance fund. It is not as technical as it sounds, so it doesn't have to be literally for equipment or computers. I get that question all the time. It can be for consultants. It is really building and strengthening your staff's capacity to do the work that you do. That is between $500 and $6,000. Both of these are managed by an amazing colleague of mine, David Portillo, and you can see the contact email for each of those included on this deck. This piece is around all the other funding opportunities that you will see, and I really just wanted to highlight these to get the ideas flowing with you. And if there are any of these that you would like to discuss, multiple or individual, you can arrange a call with us and we can discuss which ones might be a good fit in more detail. You can see the funding opportunity areas on the right and the name of the fund on the left. These range from adults, aging adults, museum curation, animal health, education. And what I think is really important to see here is that there's a different approach to each of these. So for instance, we have 2 performing arts funds to support performing arts. The Eulipians Fund takes an approach of supporting Black performing arts and Black history and trying to preserve that culture here in Denver. Whereas Bowen is more access, especially for younger people, to access performing arts and be able to have that engagement early on and create that passion and drive for students, no matter their ability to pay to access that. Those were both initiated by third parties who found the Denver Foundation the best home for those funds. And so it's our job to engage with community that overlaps, but might have also different focuses within the arts to make sure that those groups can find these funds specifically. Don't worry, you don't have to write all of this down. Like we said, we will be sharing this slide deck with you, but I thought it might be helpful to just have them all on one quick page before you go into our website so that you know which ones you might be hunting for in particular. Some of these are on a twice-a-year basis, some are on a once-a-year. And as you look at these, if you see something that is coming up really close, I would check to see if there's going to be another application cycle so that you can put forth your best possible submission. And the other thing that I would mention is that just reminding you that you don't have to pick and choose between these. They are all available to you if you fit any of these areas, and we're more than happy to discuss them. Also, if you have donors who have wanted to set up funds to support organizations like yours, just remember that we have multiple fund options for them as well. Those are the pieces within funding opportunities, and I'm going to hand it over to Zach to discuss fund management for your particular funds here at the Denver Foundation.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you to everybody on this webinar today and for being a fund holder and being interested in the work that we do. I think it's important to acknowledge that at a community foundation, our work is pretty complex and we do a lot of different things. So I thought it was important to show the team behind the scenes or in different pockets of the work that we do to kind of display all the things that we're involved in and how those different pieces of work will come into play in the work that you do day to day. And we really thank you for being a philanthropic partner with us in the community and for doing the work that you do every day, improving people's lives in the place that we live. So thank you to us. But my name is Zach Clapper. I'm the one you hear from the most probably in the world. I'm a senior engaged philanthropy officer here at the Denver Foundation. My job is really to work with nonprofits, schools, government entities, and faith organizations to establish charitable funds that benefit themselves, whether that is a general endowment that will support their operations in perpetuity, or maybe a project fund or a capital campaign or need some investment advice. It's really our job to be in conversation with you all to really strengthen your long-term sustainability alongside providing the day-to-day service of contact info updates, when you need to make a distribution out of a fund, how to get money into the fund, and just to be an overall resource as you continue your work. Even if you might not naturally think we could be a resource, we still would love to know what you're working on and how we might be able to plug in and support. Let's move on to the next slide. So your day-to-day fund management as our agency fund holders can include a lot of different points of contact with me. But here are some of the highlights about what you might want to reach out to me about or discuss or set up a meeting so that we can deep dive. Maybe it's updating your contact information at your organization. Maybe positions have changed, people have changed, and people need access to fund information. And we really want to know the best people to talk to at your organization when it comes to the fund management. So always invite us into those updates as you have them, and we'll be sure to keep that information accurate and up to date. And a part of that is access to the fund manager portal. This is really your hub for fund information. This is where you get your statements every month. This is where you can track gifts into the fund, and you can see distribution history as well. This also has some documents that will be helpful for you all. So having access to this fund portal is a really critical part, and that's why that contact info is so important to us to have up-to-date records. Now, a part of this fund manager portal is that you also will be able to see what's spendable out of your endowment. So we do that calculation every year in January, and we post it to your fund manager portals so that you can see what is available to take out of your endowment if you have it, or just see the current fund balance if it's another type of fund. Additionally, I would love to know about your need to add money to a fund. Maybe you got a big gift or you want to create a new fund alongside what you already have. You have some investment need, or you just want to talk out some strategy about what you have as far as charitable funds that are dedicated to your ongoing operations, a specific program, or maybe it's a legacy endowment that's named after a longtime supporter of yours. So really, as those situations come up, we want to be in on the conversation, and we want to help guide you as much as we can and be a resource as you're developing sort of a more complicated structure of funds that are held here at the Denver Foundation. The other thing is I'd love to meet with you here at the new office. Some of you have probably seen the office space, but I would invite you to come see it, set up a time with me to see the building. It's a community resource that we share with the community, our partners. We have a lot of different community meetings here that it's all available to you all. So if you need an external meeting space, you want a small office for the day, please just get in contact with me, and we are here to help accommodate those needs as another resource. And then finally, I would just invite you all to initiate those meetings. We're working through a lot of different community needs. I'm trying to get to know everybody's mission and where they're at in their organizational ascension. And we really want to be involved in as much or as little of that conversation as you would want us to, whether that's an update on what you're doing in the community. You want to talk to us in a finance committee about how the fund has performed with the investments. You want to talk planned giving and fundraising, maybe to go back to Jen's slides and deep dive on some of those funding opportunities. We really just want to be connected to you at every turn. So really invite us to meet, give us updates. Please have us to your board meetings, your finance, your investment committee meetings, connect us with those people as well. And we're happy to talk to you at any turn. So I am going to invite Jen to come back up, and we'll do a little Q&A. If Ben is still on the line, I know we had an investment themed question, and maybe we'll have you started off with that. And Ben, I'll repeat it for you. The question was, does the Denver Foundation support agency fund clients in developing policies related to philanthropic investments? Or what advice would you provide to a client who has an endowed fund with the Denver Foundation and needs to update their investment policies to align with what they have endowed and invested?
That's great. Thank you so much, Zach. And it's a great question. Thank you. I would take that along two tracks. One is around the investment policy statement. So importantly, with our program, you are pooling your endowed assets with us alongside our own endowment. And so very much our interests are aligned there. Each of our three pools has its own investment policy statement, which is very much something that we share with you, share with your boards, so that you can understand that. For your investment policy statement as an agency fund client, we recommend a best practice be that you have one, and particularly to talk about inside of your organization, how do you govern investment decisions, right? But unlike a lot of other investment policy statements, you may not have details around restricted investments, asset allocation. What you're doing in our program is you're delegating that responsibility to the Denver Foundation. So you would very explicitly say there that for this period of time, your investment policy statement matches that of the pool you have selected. I think second point in a question we get quite a bit is around spending policy, right? And your endowment spending policy can be contained in that same document. And again, we encourage a best practice from a governance perspective, right? You want to talk about how within your organization do you determine that annual or periodic distribution from your endowed funds here. Zach talked about the spendable amount in your donor portal. That's a calculation we do for you automatically, which reflects a rolling 36-month average. But that is, just one suggestion we have as a best practice. You as an organization may say we want to take 3% annually, we want to take 4% annually, or we want it as needed. What we encourage you to do in your policy is, again, outline that governance. And we would suggest that you have a board vote, a board resolution on an annual basis when you do or do not take a distribution. We think of that as a best practice within this kind of investment governance world. Most importantly, again, I think as you've heard throughout this presentation, we're here to support you in those conversations. So bring us in with those questions. I think particularly now with current market conditions, we've gotten lots of questions around what should we be distributing? When should we do that? What's the timing there? We're here to support you in those conversations. So again, great question. Thanks for the participation.
Thank you,
Zach,
Ben.
can I add just one
Yeah,
quick
please.
thing? We will never approve or decline or say one way or the other about your own investment policies internally. That is, we are here to support, but not kind of be that final writer. But I think what's important to know, as Ben was talking about, we can come in and explain our investment policy for alignment purposes. So I would think of it more as, let's talk through all the pieces that the Denver Foundation looks at, our values, our racial equity focus, our ESG model, and how we've put ours together and what pieces are best for you to take and use for your own. Also know that while you have to adhere to our investment policy for the funds that you have here, your investment policy internally does not have to 100% align exactly with ours for the work that you do outside of the Denver Foundation. So it's usually best for us to start having Zach and Ben or Zach and myself come in and talk to your investment committee before the broader board, because you have a pretty, I would imagine, a pretty wide gamut of folks on that. And so having that smaller discussion will help you have champions on the inside who really understand the structure that you're trying to provide through the policy and the purpose of it before bringing it to a wider audience.
Thank you, Jen. That was good clarification in addition. And another question we got was, how is that spendable amount calculated? And Ben touched on this in his remarks earlier, but we really look at 3 years of fund balances looking back. When we come to this year in 2023, we'll look at the quarter beginning at the third quarter of this year. We're on a calendar year, so we'll look backwards 3 years on the fund's life and average the balances of the fund balances over that time, and then we'll calculate it based on the percentage that you selected in the original fund agreement or in subsequent addendums if you've changed it. And that our system will do that, and we post it in January, and it all becomes available and will show up on your fund manager portal. So if you ever have any questions about that or the timing of it, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to give you more information or updates on the timing of that.
Zach, do you want to explain how they access it or what they do to initiate it once they take a peek?
Yeah, so once you know what your spendable balance is, tying back to kind of what Ben said, that's a good discussion point for you as the organization to look at that number and make a decision. As you all know, there's no requirement to take a distribution out of a nonprofit endowment. So your choice is to take up to the amount that is calculated. You could take a portion of that, or you can take none of it and let it invest over time, depending on what your organization's strategy is for that fund. But it's a great discussion point, decision point for you to make within your organization to look at your budget, look at your upcoming needs, and see what you need to take out of that fund. Yes. Thank you, Jen. The other question we have is, can we suggest ways that nonprofits navigate discussions with other funders about having an endowment? And do we find that there is a negative perception or deterrent when applying for other funding? I'll actually tackle that last part first. We don't use that, as Jen mentioned earlier, as a determinant in any of our funding decisions. And most of those funding decisions are made by a committee of community members who wouldn't even know that relationship anyway, unless we told it to them. So it's not a negative, it's not a positive, it is a net neutral for you all. But we want to give you the most information about all of the funding opportunities that you're available for. And when you have questions, when you want to deep dive, there's always a person that you can talk to about those funding opportunities. Now, I'm going to ask Ben and Jen maybe their perspectives, maybe start with Jen, about how they navigate these discussions. And I think that we really lean on transparency at the foundation here. We really are transparent about fees, process, the documents you're signing, what it'll look like over time, what investments look like in both the rear view and what we're looking forward in the coming years. But Jen, how do you suggest that people, as they're beginning this conversation with other funders or maybe even private providers about endowments and investment, what are some of the considerations that they should think about?
Sure. I interpreted this question in two different ways, so I'm going to answer it in two different ways because that's the only way my brain works. So the first is what are some considerations as you're considering opening an endowment and you're looking at multiple providers? I think flexibility of funding, fee rates is always an important one. Their investment strategy and values alignment with your organization. And an important discussion to have with your team before you even start that is the amount of power and control you want over the investment strategy. So if it's by the pool, we're a great option. If you want to dig into the portfolio managers and hire and fire away, this is meant to take that onus off of you because this is what we do every day. And the idea is that you can focus more on your programs. The second way that I read that is, okay, we're ready to open an endowment, but there seems to be this perception that there's a very narrow window where nonprofits either it's like an avocado. They're either too green for a lot of support and they worry about the sustainability. Then there's this really narrow, healthy stream of revenue. And then they're too healthy and they don't need funder support. And so I used to call it the avocado program or problem when I was a development director of how do I explain at the same time, we really need your support, but we'll be fine without it. But we also really could do more with it. And it felt like this dance to see what was appropriate for each funder. What I will say is I go to myself and my team go to a monthly funders forum and discuss all sorts of issues. And seeing an endowment usually indicates that nonprofit is in that third phase of nonprofit development, where they're thinking about the future, they're building out for new programs. And it actually makes most of us feel really great because it indicates that you are trying to invest some of the funds that you're receiving, most likely not from grants, because most of us will not allow the funds, ironically, to go into endowments, but that you're thinking through, in 20 years, this endowment could fully support XYZ program. And so while you're supporting it through the grants now, the idea is that you'll be able to come to us with other needs over time because you're diversifying the way that you're thinking about your funding streams. So I would say it's more of a nuanced conversation with major donors than it is with funders. Funders understand the need, and some funders are actually even seeding some endowment programs here in Denver. So we understand the need for an endowment program. The questions we usually have are, is that endowment program was it donor initiated or was it nonprofit initiated? What's your flexibility to spend it? And is it for general operating or for a specific program? Because if you have, say, a lack of funding for general ops, but you have this endowment someone set up in good faith that is funding more than you need for the program they really wanted, that helps us understand that while on the books, you may have a really healthy asset, it's so narrowly limited that you really need us to come in and supplement in a different way. So I would say be very open and upfront with funders about your endowment, where those funds came from and what your intentions are. And it actually helps us have a much like 15, 20 years down the road discussion with you, as opposed to the today needs of your organization or in addition to.
Yeah, and I think Jen's exactly right on that outward signal to your donors and your supporters that you created an endowment and you're thinking about the next 20, 50, 100 years of your organization and you wanting to sustain that work. Ben, maybe weigh in a little bit, as we have had conversations specifically around investments. And I think that transparency point is important too, that we really like to lead with that around all sorts of parts of our work. So could you speak to that a little bit in this question?
Yeah, I think, to really just echo something, Zach, that you said and Genevieve brought up, something we talk a lot about here is asking questions, right? Sitting down with your donors, asking those open-ended questions and finding out about their goals, their passions, what's important to them. It's the same approach we take, in working with you as our client. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish with this endowment, right? And I think what's been shared, right, is the signal that having an endowed fund at the Denver Foundation can make to your donors around your financial sustainability, around your strength to last for the long term. But asking those open-ended questions can really reveal all sorts of wonderful things about your donors, right? Maybe they're going through an estate planning process, right? And that really opens the door to say, how would you like to continue your support of this nonprofit that you've cared about far into the future? And our goal is, again, to be an extension of your team, right? To come around the table and support you in that conversation. And that may be talking about the long-term nature of the investments, talking about how the investments match with your donors' goals, and how we can construct really creative gift structures that accomplish a whole range of goals. Charitable remainder trusts continue to be a big topic among the donor community, right? And we're here to support you in that conversation on how your donor might set up a charitable remainder trust that will ultimately benefit your nonprofit. So, I think the message, again, you're hearing is, bring us in. We want to take a collaborative place around the table and support you in these conversations.
Yes. Well, thank you, Ben and Jen and Desa and Javier for your words today, your guidance as we work with you all to develop these funds, enhance these funds, grow these funds. We really want to be in conversation with you. So please follow up with an invitation for us to meet, whether it's just about an update on what you have going on so that we're informed and that we're still engaging with you in a learning framework, or maybe we want to talk investments, funding, fundraising, plan giving, any of the topics that we touched on today. There's a lot more expertise that you even see here today. So we really thank you all for your partnership over these years, and we look forward to talking to you in the future. Thank you all and have a great day.